turnaround story, but enough sentimentalism. It's all business. Let's go into game one between Reynad and Astrogation. Astrogation looks like he's got the Aggro Druid, a deck that's kind of been under the radar lately, and Reynad is playing a Temple Rogue.
Yeah, I think that Aggro Druid is really one of these decks that, while it's not the strongest ladder style of deck, it's very interesting to see it in a tournament lineup because it accomplishes so many of the goals you want, which is namely having advantage in a lot of aggressive matchups. The cards trade 1 for 1, and then at some point you play Living Mana, and you get a lot of stuff from Living Mana in comparison to what your opponent gets from their 5 and 6 mana cards. So I think Aggro Druid is really well positioned, and that's one of the reasons you're seeing that Warlock ban on the side of Reynad, and one of the reasons that Astrogation, you're seeing him ban Priest. Astrogation's going with this pure by-the-numbers approach where he's just trying to take out the deck that he feels is hardest to play against. And Reynad, when he bans out that Warlock, it really feels like this could be an Aggro Druid to me. Again, the deck lists are open, but I have not been able to access the full 16 players deck list at this point, but there's always those little things to think about. How does a ban change the way that you build the class archetype? Because it may not be the most optimal one that happens to be best for your lineup.
Warlock is the best raw control deck in this format, or class rather. And, you know, Reynad's going to try to play very aggressive. Now, Astrogation kept that Galaka Crawler in his hand, knowing that rogues love to open with early game pirates. And Reynad, having the Firefly in his opening hand, favors a little bit more power onto the board to try and pressure the Druid, because I think Jade Druid is also something on his mind in the very beginning, but now that there's open deck lists, he knows this is an Aggro Druid.
Yeah, the other thing, too, is that you get more information from the Swashbuckler. You get patches out of your deck, so you get more immediate power as well.
Right.
You get that extra point of chip damage. You know, all things considered, Reynad really is the aggressor in the matchup. When it comes from a card-for-card basis, he typically will not operate as efficiently as Astrogation will. So it's important for him to be chipping away at damage and trying to find a window of opportunity to really seize the win at that point.
Well, we'll have Astrogation's hand online in just a second, but the thing that you need to know is that Patches was just drawn in the Aggro Druid's hand. This is something that Astrogation has complained about repeatedly all the time about drawing Patches. And ever since he did, usually when people complain about drawing Patches, that's actually the magic formula to never draw Patches again, because you know it's almost as if they're just listening and correct your RNG that way. But Astrogation actually does draw Patches very often from what I've seen.
It does seem that way. You know, the times that Patches is drawn is really impactful as well. You know, if you draw it when you're playing ladder, yeah, so what? Sometimes you get set back a game or two.
You expect to.
It's those tournament situations where it's vital to be having your maximum panouts of your deck. When you draw Patches and suddenly, you know, your tournament looks different as a result. It's just very unfortunate. It's the nature of playing the card. There's risk and reward.
Well, the average time you should be drawing Patches in a 9-round Swiss is at least twice. It should happen 2 times during your 9 rounds of Swiss. So, you know, maybe you get it out of the way now, but that's definitely not what you want to be, because Aggro Druid is, at least on paper, pretty favored against the Tempo Rogue if it's able to get out its early game pressure, because they can't really come back against wide boards. You mentioned Living Mana, but even just sticking a big, powerful Druid of the Swarm, you can't really get past these Mark Yashraj minions without Spine Slayer. And even then, usually it's too late because they're going so wide, and then they power the Wild or Mark the Living.
Yeah, and Galaka Crawler is just such a big benefit to the Aggro Druid decks. You know, they want to play Beast as it is, and so having one that eats pirates and ends up becoming a 3/4 is a massive liability from Reynad's perspective.
Yeah.
So I'm wishing him luck in this one, but his hand right now, Bone Mare, Lotus Agent, he's got a lot of work to do if he's going to get to an advantageous point here.
Yeah, I like that Reynad's taking a very defensive approach, recognizing that Druid is the one that really wants to pressure at this point, and Astrogation with the Patches not really going to be doing much. What he does have, though, is that Quarter Creeper you saw in the opening mulligan.
Oh, yeah.
And that's going to come down for free. And without a Reynad having the access to his own Quarter Creeper to benefit, he can clear most of these minions, but that 5/5 is going to stick around.
Yeah, and so you can see like how important Galaka Crawler was as just a card in Aggro Druid. You know, you talked about the importance of Marka Yashraj. That's there for almost every matchup as one of the big early payoffs. In this particular matchup, it was such a large liability that Reynad is just massively behind at this point. Even the draw of Patches, I think, is not going to be enough to really keep him in this game. The damage is really going to start pouring on.
We'll see. I mean, there's nothing terribly impressive in the hand of Astrogation. He has a Spellbreaker as the far left, an Enchanted Raven in the middle, and a Mark of the Lotus just drawn, which is okay. I mean, it's still a 1-mana 2/2, kind of like another Enchanted Raven. But you also can maybe fight for a little bit better, because he has Spellbreaker and Mark of the Lotus next turn. And maybe he has a way to even capitalize off that battle cry.
Yeah, really key here for Astrogation actually to use Mark of the Lotus.
Okay, I like it.
It's not much more for like the extra damage, so much as it is that like it happens to protect him from some of these plays. Like Bite here would have been able to wipe out the Corridor Creeper. An Eviscerate play maybe sometimes takes it out. Here, the fact that he cast that just yielded so much further long-term damage.
Man, Reynad would love to have better options than this. Rockbiter, a little bit too inefficient and slow. Doesn't really have health to play with. Jade Swimmer too weak, and Lunar Vision's too overcosted at this point. Although, granted, if you kind of think about it, Lunar Vision's works very similar to Elven Minstrel without the combo requirement.
The Eviscerate here is really, I think, the interesting draw in Reynad's deck. I mean, this tells you that Prince Kalaset's not in here.
Or, I mean, there is a possibility that it is, just, you know, bad deck building. But
Yeah.
not really
Oh,
expectation.
mama.
Yeah, things weren't bad enough for Reynad. The Bittertide Hydra is extremely problematic.
That wraps things up. I don't see Astrogation having really any outs left for Reynad at this point.
Well, not trading here means that Rockbiter gets a free trade. Sorry, Rockbiter plus the Lotus agents can trade onto the Bittertide. And then Eviscerate and Bite.
Doesn't have mana.
Oh, you're right, you're right.
It's close, but it's just not quite there. So if he bites, he goes to 11. He would take 3 from... So he can't live for another turn,
He can live for another turn. He can pick up Vilespine Slayer, and if Astrogation has all air from that point on...
So a little bit of... there we go.
Yeah, a little bit of a lag there, and there's a lot of connections all in the same Ethernet port, but thankfully no disconnect.
Yeah, and I think here the draw for Astrogation was Firefly, and that's enough damage, I think, to secure his position to where I think it might be unrecoverable at this point. Swashbuckler into something insane.
You already used both Swashbucklers.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Swashbuckler would have to do, like, Sweating Plague. That would have been the exact out. Oh my gosh, just a little bit too low. Like, if he had a little bit more health, he would be able to Eviscerate, Vilespine, stabilize, then Bone Mirror, and then lock the Druid out.
And that's that Corridor Creeper power. It allowed Astrogation to make one big tempo play, using that Mark of the Lotus, push that little bit of extra damage, and secured him the overwhelming position.
I remember you were talking about the Mark of the Lotus and how it was really crucial squeezing that damage, and you just saw why. If Astrogation got a little bit greedier, wouldn't have pushed at 2 extra damage or 1 damage that turn, 2 the following turn, and that would have given Reynad the ability to survive, and then Bone Mirror lands, and then Aggro Druid doesn't really have that direct damage very often because Spellbreaker was reduced. I think Reynad could have even swung that game.
Yeah, you even could have seen like a very different turn in response to Corridor Creeper. Like without Mark of the Lotus, Bite would have been able to take it out and take only 1 damage from it. So that little thing makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
in the grand scheme of things.
Hearthstone's, in my opinion, has turned from a game of inches to a game of centimeters. It's gotten even narrower by the margins. You have to play pixel perfect, essentially, to optimize your chances. And what? Wait, whoa! Hold on. I see a card in the mulligan as we go to Priest versus Warlock. That is extremely fascinating, but also explains why Reynad doesn't ban Priest. Can we go to the game screen here?
Yeah, I'm really excited for.
I
don't want to say it. I want the visual aspect of this.
Oh happening. Yeah, it's chock full of memes, and it's exactly what everyone was talking about when theory crafting about it. But I did not expect this at all.
I heard about it, and I've thought about it, but I'm not sure I've believed about it.
Well, if you think about it, how do you really counter Priest outside of this? Oh, wait, we're on the game screen.
Yeah, take a look at that third card in Reynad's hand. That card is called the Darkness.
Yes. Which I like to call the Dankness. Honestly, this card was touted as a meme and kind of a fun little side quest card if you wanted to. But the most important thing about the Darkness is it shuffles 3 candles into your opponent's deck, which shuts off Raza the turn before he wants to play Raza on curve. So he has to wait before he can do that. And even if he does draw it, the Darkness comes to 20/20.
Yeah, so that's the thing that's very powerful about this card, is that it happens to be very strong versus Raza specifically. But the thing about it is
Anduin just got drawn.
Sometimes it happens to be a 20/20. So when Anduin gets drawn for Astrogation, you take part of that out of the equation.
Oh my goodness, Astrogation sees the darkness on curve. He has Raza and Anduin, and everything should be looking good in theory until he saw this dormant 420 drop onto the board.
Still quite a ways to go for Reynad in this matchup, though. This isn't a spectacular matchup on paper for Reynad. I think that the darkness gives him a lot of time to assemble his combo, but the gist of it is lots of Doom Guards. He wants to use the Carnivorous Cube, the second card in his hand, to summon multiple copies of Doomguard and then out-pressure the opponent via Blood Reaver Gul'dan, summoning that massive push where you can get an excess of 20 damage in a single turn very, very easily, I would say.
True. I mean, sometimes Mind Blast, like you said, can just get there with Valen as 10.
Yeah.
So now Reynad, I mean, he saw Astrogation took a really long time. Wow, Twilight Drake being drawn. But a silence also, a second silence in Astrogation hand should be able to deal with that. But if you think about it too, can Reynad start pegging Astrogation on some of those cards being held? Like Raza on 5 is pretty logical, and your opponent doesn't really have much better options than Priest of the Feast. I'm starting to, if I'm Reynad, I'm starting to put Astrogation on that Raza.
That's a lot of where paying attention to the mulligan and seeing what your opponent has and hasn't played from where is a really big deal. The top tournament players in the world are very versed at that because they practice it day in and day out.
Yes.
But Reynad, he's got an entire team that he takes care of. You know, he's got side projects that he's been working on. This event, he told me he came fairly last minute from a preparation standpoint. I'm curious how adept at actually following and tracking cards in the hand is a skill for him right now, because it takes a lot of practice.
He's definitely still got pretty good technical play, in my opinion. I think Reynad does track with the hand and think about a lot of these things. What he lacks is the corner case meta knowledge on saying, like, maybe these are some of the small things people are including. For example, you know, how are the Highlander priests teching these days? They have a couple of flexible spots. This is a really important moment, by the way. Princess Lackey could pull out the Doomguard, or he could pull out the Void Lord.
Gains 8 life as well. And that's big right now. Astrogation's out of silences. He doesn't have Shadow Word Pain.
Yeah.
And even if he had those cards, that is just a ton of stats that Reynad got.
Well, here's another thing, too. Is that Blood Reaver Gul'dan is in the hand. And that gives an opportunity for Warlock to actually close the game. Because a lot of times with the Cube and the Doomguard synergies, you can try to set up a burst, but Priest can even still stay alive past a lot of those burst scenarios because they have so many good defensive tools, and Warlock can never really get in the damage early on. That's why a lot of people started packaging Mountain Giants and Twilight Drakes back into the Cube Warlock. Zalea, of course, doing really well with that. And I think it's interesting to see Reynad even adding another layer to it with the Darkness, which is this inevitable threat, and shutting off the ability for Astrogation to use Roz the Chain.
Such a weirdly important tool.
Here, I mean, that's just one candle.
So now, if Astrogation draws the second candle, Raza is active at that point.
Right.
So the second one here is actually a really big inflection point. Reynad doesn't want to see those drawn, believe it or not. If one gets drawn, he wants both to be drawn, but he never wants the second one to be drawn.
Well, what's so funny is that it actually summons the 2020, and then does Reynad have the follow-up damage to even end the game? Which is a possibility, because he has Doom Guards.
Nice pickup for Astrogation on finding the Shadow Word Pain. Mountain Giant is in here as well.
Yeah, a Mountain Giant package, in my opinion, is pretty crucial to try and give Warlock a lot of game against control decks or even combo decks. There's a lot of burst decks that still exist in meta that are fairly annoying. And it's not that you win, it's that it gives you actual ways to pressure instead of just being defenseless.
It forces something from your opponent. And anytime that you can take them off of their ideal turn, that's usually a good thing. Because, again, Reynad's plan is to get to that ultimate spot. The Blood Reaver Gul'dan plus multiple Doom Guards. That's going to be very difficult this game because Astrogation has just had a lot of gas. So this game would be over, though, if the Darkness hadn't been in Reynad's draw.
I mean, Raza would have been down already. And then Shadow Reaper Brandon would start pressuring the life total. But because the second candle hasn't been drawn, Reynad has more time. And he's going to get closer to the Shadow Reaper Brandon, or the Blood Reaver Gul'dan turns.
Vile, not much of a help yet.
Oh, man, that possessed
significant
Lackey
draw
can pull the second Doom Guard and get the cube chains going.
So the card that Reynad has on his mind is Potion of Madness. He doesn't play this possessed Lackey instantly because if he gets Potion of Madness here, what does that mean for the rest of his game? If he waits till turn 9, he can Hellfire it away and get that demon instantaneously. Does that cost him anything on the following turn, though? You know, that future development. This is kind of a tough turn where I think I would go with Possessed Lackey because when you see Shadowy Branduin come down, you just know you're under a clock.
This is a bad matchup. I think a lot of people were debating originally about Cube Warlock.
Oh, my.
Hold on, that's 14 burst, just straight up with the Mind Blast.
Mind Blast Holy Smite next turn is 14 damage.
Right, and he can send him to 14 just by the hero power.
Is someone injured?
But Reynad has a way to heal. He has the Mistress of Mixtures. And he has Defile.
He's going to need more healing because Astrogation is positioning this Velen to really keep that pressure on Reynad. And this is very smart. He has 14 in hand. Play around that Mistress of Mixtures and try to keep your opponent pressured.
Man, Reynad's one turn off from playing Blood Reaver Gul'dan as well, which would have put him outside the range. A second Mistress of Mixtures comes into the hand for Reynad. And when your opponent is not even removing anything onto the board, you know that they're trying to set up a burst with Mind Blast and other things related to it.
So with Defile, Reynad can go to 18 health.
Yes.
He knows it's pulling a Doomguard in this situation because he's drawn the other Void Lord as well. So this is a massive turn that Reynad absolutely needed to get out of this spot.
And he had a lot of outs too with Spellstone or some other things, but the important thing is whether or not Reynad had enough just to barely stabilize.
He really needs to kill that Priest of the Beast as well. This damage is going to start adding up, but he's got a pressure as well. I mean, this is a tough spot.
Yeah. He doesn't have that much time because he has to be careful about what the Priest can do in the next 2 turns. Now here's the thing, Astrogation can still set up lethal. Shadow Visions also gives a lot of ammo for Astrogation. And you know what's also funny enough? Raza has actual damage too. If you end up playing just as a tempo card, so you can develop something onto the board and pressure. That's so funny if Astrogation's in a position that has to happen.
Discovery options are Power Word Shield, Spirit Lash, and Psychic Scream.
Psychic Scream deals with the Carnivorous Cube, but it's a little bit out of mana cost. Astrogation only has 6 mana crystals left.
Yeah, the priority right now for Astrogation is keep Reynad in the 14 point. The effective Force of Nature Savage War combo.
Can the candles appear in the Shadow Vision? I haven't played enough of the Darkness or played against it to know.
I don't actually know.
Because I mean,
I've never encountered that.
If
I would
he
assume
could,
so.
that would be the ideal scenario, right? Well, either way, no real time to think about it. Reynad plays Blood Reaver Gul'dan, and now Astrogation's even further out of range and will continue to fight against the clock because this is a lot of pressure, and Reynad's going to be getting a 6-point hell swing with the Bite Life.
Candle. So
but the
now,
2020 comes out.
Not yet.
Oh, he does. You're right. It's only the second candle.
And so Psychic Scream can take care of the board position. I imagine that's very much on Astrogation's radar. However, how much damage is he actually facing down? Can he just simply set up another spot to make a lethal push?
Well, if he has a way to destroy the cube, that's 14 damage plus the hero power. So
Astrogation is actually 1 point of damage outside of the range of Reynad right now. But if he plays a minion, he's not. Because the Voidwalkers can then trade in and allow space for Doomguard to come down. So it's actually very wise of Astrogation to start wiping the damage immediately, not play for the pressure this turn.
Nice. I mean, you really see the power of Psychic Scream, just shuffling all those cards, and half of them are not good. You don't want Voidwalkers in your deck.
Oh my.
Doomguard's pressure, and you can even set it up that Skull of Inari pulls out Doomguards.
Yeah, Reynad really needs to pad life total a lot. So hero power is probably slated for the rest of the game. And then finding the right ways to actually pressure Astrogation out of this. The Carnivorous Cube getting shuffled away rather than actually dying. Massive liability for Reynad at this point.
He's going for it.
I like it.
And he keeps the other Doomguard.
When you keep the other Doomguard, there is a big argument for playing it instead, but I'm just not sure about the math on this one. Is it better to pad your life total, or is it better to get pressure going?
Set your opponent to 12, and then you have Hellfire. Oh, you don't have Hellfire. You need everything to stick onto the board.
Yeah, I think I like the life total padding. At 22, it's looking like he may be safe for another 2 turns here. So
it's dicey. Raza comes down, and then you have the Shadow Word Death.
Oh no, this is waste. This is insane amounts of damage now.
Yeah, I mean, Prophet
Can
Phalanx
Darkness attack if it transforms that turn?
Because it transforms on your opponent's turn.
But I'm saying, like, if you Cold Light Oracled and they drew it.
Oh, no, it should have.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I've never actually summoned the 2020. I've tried.
And then
But
from
yeah.
hand, Reynad has... I'm sorry, Astrogation has 14,
Wait.
28 damage.
Oh, just a little bit too short. If he had some way to kill this cube.
Yeah, there's no way for him to actually activate.
You
the cube
actually,
at
if he
this
had
point.
one more mana, he actually could cube and then Hellfire and kill his own cube, and then that would actually be enough for lethal as well.
Where's the coin? This really illustrates the importance of Dark Pact. Being able to actually destroy your own minion, a vital piece of this deck.
Or even just getting a little bit of extra damage in, too.
I mean, you look back to the Possessed Lackey turn where Reynad was under pressure. Astrogation was using his resources very liberally to create that pressure. And had he not done that, Reynad would likely still have access to Dark Pact.
Man, that mythological 11 mana lethal. Reynad gonna set up the cube.
21's not enough versus free hero power, though.
Oh no, just one turn away from the darkness. We get to see finally how it works. It doesn't matter. And Astrogation, because he has the free hero power with the Prophet Valen, should be enough to close out this game.
So
And let that be a lesson to show you guys the power or the impotency of tech cards. And
This
also,
deck is just
why we
so
ban
strong.
Priest.
Yeah, it's just so strong. But that's the thing, is I don't think Reynad's lineup is meant to focus on Priest. It's meant to
You sure?
not have a drastically weak spot. And honestly, if Astrogation's playing Control Warlock, it looks like Reynad's lineup is potentially weaker against that than it would be otherwise. But now at this position, he has to win 3 straight, or round 1 is going to start with a loss column.
Well, here's actually some food for thought too. Is that Astrogation pretty much drew everything perfectly that game. He drew Raza and Anduin. He had silences for both of the Twilight Drakes. He had removal for the Giants, and he had just barely enough. Like, he had the Psychic Scream off that Shadow Visions. Now, granted, the deck is actually more consistent than you might think it is for Highlander Priest, but it just had all the answers. And Reynad was able, if he was able to generate a little bit more damage, might have been able to get over the hump because he was short and he had to make some hedge plays because he wasn't able to push damage.
Yeah, the really one that I think to focus on is how much pressure that Astrogation was able to apply with what he had. Without that pressure, Reynad would have had an extra Dark Pact at the end, and that Dark Pact would have delivered the burst damage to kill.
And if he also didn't draw the second candle.
Yeah, that as well.
Yeah, it could have easily been even maybe a turn or two lower. Reynad would have actually had that burst. So I actually don't hate it. So let's see if Reynad can turn it around here. And it looks like he's going to switch to Druid as his 3rd class. And Astrogation is going to play Rogue.
This matchup can get quite tricky, I think, from both sides. Astrogation, he has to worry about the tech cards from Reynad. Again, this was open deck list, so he knows that Galactic Crawler is present in the list.
Yeah.
And with Reynad playing Jade Druid, if he can scale Jades and mana, which he definitely can with this hand, the combination of those two, I think, is often what puts Reynad at the advantage in the Jade Druid versus Tempo Rogue matchup. Being able to eventually scale into board presence and unlock his powerful cards, that 1-2 punch is usually too much for Astrogation to overcome.
See that a couple of the matches have ended. Zalay in the background of Astrogation's camp. He was playing purple. We'll get all the updates to you guys as one of our observers is closely monitoring the Smash GG website. If you want to look at the Swiss rounds, how they're progressing, if you want to look at the deck lists, smash.gg/ESS for all of your needs here for the Esports Superstars. Astrogation going to go for the South Sea Captain, but that is an open invitation for a Galactic Crawler. But Reynad also has the Jade Blossom, so he can actually wait for a turn, take a little bit of extra damage. But without that Galactic Crawler, this double Captain opening would have been game over.
This double Captain open is still very strong. I'm actually quite surprised that Reynad chose to go with the Jade Blossom over the Galactic Crawler here.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of damage to eat up. And that's really where Astrogation finds his edge. It's not in these insurmountable style of turns. It's by constantly making those pushes, and that one that sticks is too much at some point.
Right. I guess maybe Reynad thinks that if he doesn't have a chance to play early on, he won't get a chance to pull off this Nourish Galactic Crawler
This was the
combo.
intention, was this combo right here. But,
Right. But you also evaluate Reynad's hand. He had a lot of good plays, and Jade Blossom set up a lot more for the future 2 turns down the road.
Backstab SI. certainly on deck for this turn. Maybe not, though. Always important to take your time. You know, if he uses backstab SI right now, does he maybe give up too much against it's like a Jade Behemoth or a Phantom or something?
This guy's toast.
Right now, Reynad's coming into, what, 8 crystals next turn?
Yeah, we went from 5 to 7 and going into 8.
Okay. So he should be able to hero power down patches, set up a Jade Behemoth. And branching paths, by the way. We're talking about the card and the flexibility it has to offer. But something that we just kind of didn't really talk too much about, at least in the early predictions, is how obnoxious 12 life really is. Greater healing potion style, where it's able to gain 12 armor, and that also buffs your Jasper Spellstone.
Yeah, it's important that it actually, each one of them activates independently as well. Right. So it will buff a Jasper Spellstone to 3rd level if it's in your hand. And that Jade Behemoth, this turn, you can see how Reynad's playing. You know, you mentioned his technical play. And where I was like, wow, the Galactic Crawler looked really strong.
Right.
He took a little bit of extra damage, but look at the position he's in now. If he had played that Galactic Crawler, all of this would be 1 turn behind.
Well, several turns behind, actually, because he was able to nourish for crystals because of that Jade Blossom play. And that means Reynad gets a value trade no matter how this sword gets placed.
Cobalt Scalebane is still very scary to face down. And so is Reynad a taunt gamer or a poison gamer? I heard Muzzy once say, even when you're 100% dead on board and you're going to lose, better players make poison. Now, I don't know how accurate that is.
Interesting. I mean, I know the better players kill the 6-3 with their hero power, even though they don't want to. He makes the poison spiders.
This is very strong, too. I mean,
It's
he's
so
seen SI.
strong.
He's seen 2 backstabs.
Wow.
These are just very powerful cards right now.
Astrogation might have to toss in some of his other, silences or South Sea deckhands to avoid that.
Yeah, I'm looking at Spellbreaker.
That still doesn't deal with the second spider.
You're going to make a sacrifice one way or
I
another.
know. That's so... The spiders... I mean, because 1/5s against 5/5s... Look, I'm not a mathematician or anything, but I don't think that's particularly very good. We got an update, by the way, from our production that RDU was able to win 3-0 over WTY Bill. WTY Bill, of course, from 2016 Winter Championship, made quite the run in last year's HCT. Look how annoying this is for Astrogation. And now this Quarter Creeper is challenged no matter what he does. And even worse, if the Scalebane lands its sword onto the Quarter Creeper, what a waste. Oh!
That is not super effective.
Wow.
However, Reynad...
I mean, actually, if you think about it, it makes sense, because Pokemon taught me that poison beats bug every time.
No combat.
You get the stab bonus.
You're perfect.
Yeah.
My brain
you
wasn't
thought
even
you
close
were
to
a
there.
bigger nerd than me. You thought wrong.
That's true.
My thoughts are plagued.
It's true. People are looking at me right now. We have a couple of observers looking at me like I'm weird, but it's true. Look it up right now. If you look at the matchup chart.
Yeah, if you Google how big of a nerd is Frodan...
That's why Beedrill is just strictly better than Butterfree, because you're able to beat it into head-to-head. I'm a Weedle gamer. Are you a Metapod gamer with the 1/5 Scarabs, or are you a Weedle gamer? Tell me, Admirable.
I like poison.
Yeah. Alright, well, Astrogation can't really fight back even on this board alone, so it looks like Jade Druid will be able to stabilize. And just by the armor gain alone, and the branching paths can now be used to draw cards, I'm liking Reynad's spot here. I can't really think of a top deck that can pull Astrogation out of this situation.
Thinking maybe Bone Mare. That's about it.
On what, though? He's going to clear everything.
Well, not the rest run. For sure, nothing's happening.
He had to clear just with the hero
right.
power.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he's just done. I think this is too big of a thing to come back from.
Reynad going to go for the 12 life. He has 2 ways to draw with Wrath and Wild Growth, so instead of Leroy and Shadow Step being a possible way to lose, going to take the safe route out.
Yeah, it's very wise as well. I mean, if that's the only way you're going to lose this point, play around that. Another update from around the tournament so far. Hot Meowth was 3-1 over Frozen in round number 1 as well.
That is going to be a concession. Oh, I guess he's going to hold out just for a little bit longer. As Astrogation doesn't look like he'll win this one, so the series will be 3-1 at the very least. Speaking of which, 3-1 is the score for Muzzy over Naviute. That shouldn't be too much of a surprise in terms of the advantage. People usually put Muzzy there, but I think Naviute definitely has a lot of fight. If you looked at his Sydney Invitational results, I think a lot of people expect big things from him this year too.
Reynad's going to go through the motions. Continue to draw cards, but his Jades are just way too big at this point.
I mean, he can just clear the board and pressure with a little bit and gain life, and Rogue can't do anything about it.
What a great use from Reynad on his life total this game as well. Making that early sacrifice, eating the damage with double captain draw, and then making it up by having this tempo unlocked later on. It was the combination of the ramp and the Jades that really set it apart this game. So very strong opening for Reynad, and I like the execution. I think I would have played Galaka Crawler myself, and I think I would have gotten punished.
Well, it's a 2-1 score in favor of Astrogation. Reynad now has won with his Jade Druid, which has been a deck that's slid under the radar, I think, for a lot of people, at least on ladder. People are saying that Jade Druid is not really a deck that you climb ladder with, but then Mr. Yakut very recently, I think 2 days ago, was able to clear #1 Legend on NA with Jade Druid, the most competitive server. So I think it goes to show you that Jade Druid's got a lot of game, even though people are ignoring it.
Definitely the better server.
Yeah, it's the hardest server to compete on.
Yeah, there's not as many competitors because all the best players just wipe the floor with everybody else, so you can't afford to compete there.
Yeah. Well, actually, if we can step aside from the memes for a brief second, America is the last server to close for Legend ranks. So what happens is America has everybody who hasn't placed top 100 or top 200 or whatever they're aiming for in Asia or Europe. So they all come to America for the points. So it's the most competitive just by the definition, which means there's the most people competing for spots.
Yeah, good save.
Yeah.
A classic tempo rogue mirror match. And honestly, you think about the tempo rogue mirror match, and there's so much talk that revolves around Prince Keleseth and Shadow Step and the giant, powerful plays that can unlock. But one of the big differences in this matchup is the tempo plays of backstab. The well-timed South Sea Captains, the SI7 agent turnarounds, and the Vile Spine Slayers. Keleseth certainly gives you a leg up in that regard, but Tempo Rogue is the name of the deck. And so finding those strong turns and finding the best ways to allocate those resources, I think is what really makes the difference in this matchup.
Well, I think another big difference in the matchup is the Quarter Creepers. I think they define the big tempo swings on how you control the state of the board. And often, just even sneaking that Quarter Creeper even a turn earlier than your opponent by 1 mana difference will define the matchup. And Reynad has that, plus he has additional card draw, plus he has even other ways to swing tempo through SI7 Agent and a South Sea Captain to buff his patches.
Yeah.
Astrogation has that, but I know going first a lot of times in the aggressive matchups or the tempo-based ones are often great, but in Rogue specifically, I really like having the extra card in the coin.
Yeah, I mean, think about how Astrogation held on to this Swashbuckler. It's because landing a timely South Sea Captain is such an important measure in the matchup. Reynad doing the same thing, holding on to his Swashbuckler. This is a demonstration of how important it is to time your resources to answer more than they should. If they both simply play Pirates in this matchup, what ends up happening is they trade into each other. They no longer have that utility with South Sea Captain.
So I think this is where you can really start to see a lot of deviation in the ideas between Astrogation and Reynad. Astrogation just playing a very solid deck list. Serenite Chain Gangs, Cobalt Scalebanes, Pirates, Quarter Creepers. Reynad is putting Galaka what seems like in every single one of his deck, and then he's going even a step further and putting the Darkness in his Warlock deck to try and beat the Priest because he's not banning it.
Just wants that little bit of an edge versus
yeah. And he's trying to target. He's trying to capitalize on what Conquest is, but the problem is that the meta is only 2.5 weeks old, so it's really hard to define whether or not the meta is a certain way. But if there's one thing that I know is that people love playing Pirates.
Yeah, I mean,
so I think Galaka Crawlers in every one of your decks makes sense.
Rogue is just a very powerful deck. There's no question about it. And so Reynad's lineup looks like it's meant to have the advantage versus Rogue. He has those tech cards in there to help in matchups that he can see that are out there, like Priest, for instance. But the gist of it is that he wants all of his decks to be favored in this style of matchup, and it's built that way. The Elven Minstrels, I think, are fantastic in this matchup. The Galaka Crawlers can give you a very large edge.
Here we go.
Yeah, but this was a big swing for Astrogation because Reynad coined out South Sea Captain, now has to wait for his opponent to respond with his own Captain, but that's where the Galaka Crawler comes in.
Exactly.
Galaka Crawler to shut down the Captain,
This was a great sequence of pan out for Reynad, where that corridor creeper is starting to get fueled. Elven Minstrel's going to be on deck, and this is at the end of the day a giant resource battle. It's very rarely that you see one player just completely blow out the other, and what it comes down to is who can get the best trades with their resources. Whoa! Wow, big pickup.
That
for
card
Reynad as
is
well.
so powerful because of Elven Minstrel.
That's an innervate.
That's an Innervate.
And Vilespine is a big pickup for Astrogation as well. He has to get to that Bone Bear turn at some point.
Right.
And given the Corridor Creeper Elven Minstrel coming up for Reynad, if you see him draw Vilespines off this, it is going to be lights out.
I mean, it seems like Astrogation's turns are pretty straightforward. He's the one going first. He should be the aggressor. He's got Serenite on 4, Cobalt Scalebane on 5, Swashbuckler Vilespine combination on 6, and to a Bone Mare. But can Reynad disrupt it enough? And he's got some really good cards to do it. In fact, can he can, oh my gosh, a second Corridor Creeper.
This turn just got complicated.
Well, I was looking at South Sea Depthcan and the Corridor Creeper to try and play it for free. I wonder if the second Corridor Creeper changes anything. Because the thing you have to think about is you can try to play a little bit greedier with the Corridor Creepers and go for a bigger swing turn to play them at the same time, because then they can't remove both of them. But I'm going to leave it to Reynad. These are actually fairly complicated turns. These are some of the things that you have to consider when you're playing Corridor Creeper. It's not as obvious when you're trying to play a mirror like this.
I love watching mirror matches for this exact reason too. It's the partitioning of resources. It's understanding when the timing is most important to be landing this stuff. You know, Reynad would love to be able to play multiple minions in a turn where he's heading into Bone Mare, or a turn where Astrogation is looking at Vilespine Slayer.
Right.
And so that's exactly what Reynad's thinking about here, is that exact sequence. So he's probably playing a Corridor Creeper this turn because he drew the second one. Had he not drawn that, I would think he's looking at an Elven Minstrel turn with this. And so now, without Backstab, Astrogation is not launching a Vilespine, which means value for Reynad.
Yeah, it's a free kill on the Cobalt Scalebane in development. And he's going to need to, because Elven Minstrel, even though it's a powerful effect, pretty bad on tempo. 4-mana 3/2 is definitely not what you want to do. That's worse than Eater of Secrets level.
This turn is going to get ugly for Astrogation.
Oh my gosh. That's 4 minions dead on board. 3 cards played before the Van Cleave.
This might be game over right here. This is insane.
Oh, wow. Actually, can Astrogation come back? I'm trying to think of outs here.
It's another Vilespine Slayer, I think. Like, that's one of the only ways he's going to get this. This is not enough tempo to secure the board position. And now, while Reynad isn't landing Bone Mare turn, he just has big stuff out. So Astrogation's going to lose his board, and then he's going to run into Elven Minstrel. And that's where that value battle is.
Yeah, that gas is so powerful. I mean, Reynad also might just pressure for lethal if he has the opportunity to. But
It's hard to ignore the impact of Swashbuckler this game as well. I mean, picking up the coin was huge for these tempo swings.
Absolutely massive. Now he can keep a nice squeaky board for Bone Mare.
Another Minstrel.
Another Minstrel with the perfect Tar Creeper curve as well. Everything is coming to Millhouse here for Reynad rather. And Astrogation has nothing to do this turn.
Yeah, we're going to see Game 5.
We got another report in, by the way, as this looks like it's going to Game 5. It could be the last series that we'll watch for the Swiss round, as Amnesiac just took out, just saying,
3 games to
3 to 1.
A lot of 3-1s so far in round 1, it's sounding like.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of that, I think, is just the way that Conquest is going to roll. Like, until players start to figure out where the actual best lineups are sitting, there's going to be some pretty heavy lopsided matches, I think, on sides.
I mean, I'm so lost at Astrogation. Sometimes you just look and you hover over cards like, oh man, what do I even do at this point? He's trying to save for a Bone Mare comeback, but I mean, he might even just be dead. 5 plus 6, 11, 13.
Not quite dead, but he is effectively dead. I mean, This is full board, full hand, and choked resources.
Full hand.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
They show up eventually.
Yeah, just the fact that the Elemental drew double bone there.
Yeah, and so the Minstrels, I think, were like the absolute closing perspective of this game, but Corridor Creeper was really what played the largest role. Being able to facilitate a defensive style of play into a big tempo swing was just way too much for Astrogation to recover.
Yeah, Aggregation is actually pretty close to dead on board. He's surviving by 1 HP based off his count on the board. Reynad has 8 damage, or 9 damage if you count the dagger. The Bone Mare should clean this up.
Oh, wow.
If he needs any other help, Bosma Slayer's there for him. Trying to use a tilt factor.
Embarrassment of riches here.
Yeah. I mean, if there is a player that I feel like I could try and add a little bit something to maybe tilt, it might be Astrogation.
I would think that he has a pretty level head at this point. I think early on he was experiencing a lot of frustration because he was putting in so much work and not really seeing the fruits of his labor come out.
I can definitely empathize there.
But in the last year or so, though, he's had a wonderful year. It's not big tournament wins. It's not flashy top 8s at championships, but there's no denying his point standings throughout the year. Number 3 in points with 101 HCT points accumulated in 2017. I think Astrogation is kind of looking at this and going, wow, what happened? I was up 2-0. But I think a lot of that work was focused on his mental game, and I think he's one of the strongest ones out there, honestly.
Oh, yeah. I think one of the cutting-edge things that can really set you apart in Hearthstone is just the proper mentality. I think people are looking at edges and certain cards to play as, you look at 2 players who talk about, or who represent that, Chalky and Powell. They're still playing their match right now. But one of the most important things is to kind of always stay calm and collected, no matter what you do.
It's a difficult thing to do. You're round 1 of an event. There's $30,000 up for grabs, and just as we were mentioning Chalky and Pavel were still playing, they are no longer playing anymore.
Yes, Chalky, you can see, is standing up. Actually, it's not on screen. It's on our screen. Pavel and Chalky has played, and Chalky has come up on top 3-1 over the reigning world champion, at least for just another couple weeks here.
I spoke to Pavel this morning, and he mentioned that he wasn't feeling the best.
No, he's been traveling event to event. He spent a few weeks in China, went straight from there to Seat Story Cup, went straight from there to Taiwan, went straight from there to here, where he'll be playing in this event and the Rat Race. He's been
just a couple tournaments
on the grind, and I think he's on his farewell tour for being a world champion, but he told me that he's having some problems preparing. He's just not really practicing and prepping. He's just kind of seeing what other people do and theory crafting everything. And also, Pavel doesn't really prepare with other people. He's kind of always been an independent thinker. So his results certainly have taken a pretty big hit because he hasn't had time to go to his hyperbolic time trip.
Well, I'll be curious to see how this one ends up. Astrogation does have Elven Minstrel in his build as well, so something he certainly would have loved to see last game. But this matchup can get awfully tricky on both sides, where Reynad certainly has to find the balance of his life total. How much damage can he afford to take? Where can he afford to invest into upcoming turns? And for Astrogation, it's making the most of his damage. What's the fewest amount of cards he can use while applying the same effective amount of pressure?
Right.
It doesn't have to be the most damage. It has to be enough to set up turns that offer him kill potential. And so that's a really tricky thing to ask, because there's Defiles, there's Hellfires, there's Mortal Coils, there's potentially Tar Creepers that come out in this mix. A lot of defensive tools available for Reynad.
Yep. And with Hellfire and the Spellstone, he's going to be sitting very pretty for the mid-game.
Yeah, no Mistress. Oh, wait.
Oh.
Well,
that upgrades the
that's one
Spellstone, but that's also a really powerful enabler for Defile.
Exactly. And looking at this board state, if he plays it, it's going to get traded off. So when should he be using this Kobold Librarian, and how? And I think I like playing it, but I like saving it as well. This is just a difficult call to make. Hellfire, I think, is the reason to play it, as well as the Spellstone in hand.
Right. Well, it offsets the damage done, too, with the Spellstone, so it's not nearly as costly. And you might need to Mortal Coil and Spellstone as well, because there's a lot of 1 health minions in the form of Southseed Deckhand and the patches.
Yeah. It looks like Reynad's really looking for a turn where he can Hellfire, answer a Corridor Creeper with the Amethyst Spellstone, and then have the Possessed Lackey Dark Packs to try to close out a defensive stance.
Right. But then what's the value of saving that 1 mana? Or maybe he just wants to be 1 card deeper.
I think it has to do with that, and then also it does technically buy him some life if he sees it traded off as well. You know, say the Firefly runs into this Kobold Librarian, that is less chip damage he's taking. Maybe he doesn't have to Hellfire on the following turn.
He almost certainly will have to, though.
Yeah, when you see the captain come down, definitely.
Here's an interesting thought. Is it worth Shadow Stepping him? I was actually going to ask exactly this. To play around Hellfire and to set up the Elven Minstrel in the next turn.
Yeah, this is actually quite a brilliant play. I like this because the Elven Minstrel is going to be such a vital strategy for Astrogation. He's losing his board here. Reynad is getting quite low, so the patch's damage, not anything to ignore. It's setting up, you know, maybe a Leroy in the future. This was a great pan out for Astrogation here. Great spot. Weird play, but
I
man,
like it so much.
There once was a man from Gilneas.
I just love Elven Minstrel's battle cry.
Yeah. Scalebanes are really meaty.
Double Mistress. Wow. In hand. And so now, looking back to those turns where I was talking about, when can Reynad afford to invest? Is this one of those turns?
This is a gut check. Can you go for, do you have to be defensive, or do you want to save the Possessed Lackey for the next turn where you can use the Dark Pact Guaranteed and gain 8 life?
So many possibilities.
You can also play it slow, just coil and then the Mistresses.
You know, every time I play Control Warlock, I just rip my cards on the board super quick. So that way, early on when I'm playing it, I learn the harshest lessons imaginable. And the lesson I've learned over and over with this deck is that if you have a lot of life, you typically are going to win.
Yes.
At 12, in this matchup, Reynad actually tends to be pretty safe. So he doesn't need to play the Mistresses and then Defile just to get extra life total. He wants them to represent tempo on board. Yeah. So it's quite wise here, I think, to Defile this small board presence away, set up the Mistress of Mixtures, and look for the swing turn in the following 2 turns.
Agreed. I like it. This is an investment of 8 life plus the 8 next turn, so he's almost going to go back up to full. Plus, he already has a Doom Guards, and he wants to really pull out those Void Lords as well. Actually, either of them are fine. Could you lock out Rogue both ways?
Look how big this was here, too. Him not playing the Mistress first also strands the Corridor Creeper for Astrogation if he wants to get the maximum amount of pressure on board.
Right.
Insane how that one little difference, it just changed the entire landscape of the game.
And you have to rethink the value or the power of cards. Defile was played for a relatively low value. Defile's one of the best cards in Warlock's arsenal, and you played it on an Elven Minstrel in the patches.
But what did it set up?
It set up this amazing opportunity for Reynad.
And I am looking at that Possessed Lackey Dark Pact, and it is looking awfully good. But so is the Spellstone.
Right.
Spellstone, I think a lot of times in this matchup, you either want to hit a lone Corridor Creeper or you want to hit Cobalt Scalebane. Very few exceptions to that. And so just having access to as much life as Reynad has, I think Possessed Lackey is looking more and more appealing.
Well, I mean, the thing about the Spellstone is that you're allowed to even tap
Total
as
Coil.
well. Oh, interesting.
And so invest into the Possessed Lackey, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or Skull of Minari.
Ooh. Because that's a double investment. The Lackey only brings out 1 minion. This brings out 2.
Look at everything in this game has been like drastically changed from card to card.
And the importance of drawing first.
Which isn't always best.
Right.
But in this case, it definitely was.
And now he can double dip. I mean, this is quite a heavy reload, though.
Oh boy. That is going to absorb a lot of damage.
Well, the Vile Spine Slayer is looking very nice, too.
It just leaves behind the bodies.
It's moments like this where the cube is also so huge, because you can trade... if you have the initiative, you can trade cube and then Dark Pact it to summon more Void Lords, but Reynad just has the Possessed Lackey for this spot.
Of course, this matchup is happening right as I say, I don't expect cube block to really be that big of a thing. You know, this is right up Reynad's wheelhouse. He likes these complicated decks that have turn after turn after turn of very different directions to take. When you mentioned technical skill, I 100% agree with that. I think he's got a great mind for where the matchup actually works and what makes it tick. You're seeing that happen in this series. He's on the verge of turning around a 2-0 deficit.
I think Reynad's not really happy with that result. He really wanted the second Doom Guard, I think.
This looks great.
Well, I think he wanted so he can kill the Scalebane right now.
Sure.
Because if your opponent has the Vile Spine, You're actually kind of in an awkward spot.
Each one of these Void Lords is 24 stats across its body.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
12 of that gets wiped out right now, but Reynad's at 25. He's weakening the board position. He's got another Possessed Lackey. He's still got Amethyst Spellstone.
It's true.
He's getting a Doom Guard for free. Like,
I mean, he probably even has other cards like Twisting Nether maybe in his arsenal.
that's the one that stings a bit.
Sidestepping this Spine definitely, though. I don't know, man. I think not landing that Doom Guard is going to be a real stickler for Reynad. But now he has a Doom Guard.
He's getting 2 of them if he wants.
Oh, you're right. Now he can guarantee it.
But that shuts off a lot of cube potential future. Oh, my.
That's pretty big.
I'm thinking of, what's that card called again? Carnivorous Cube? Yeah, that draw is quite large at the moment.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Ooh, I like this.
Thin out before.
Yes.
So that way you don't draw the Doom Guard.
Draw first.
Deck thinning.
Well, if it was because he only has 1 card left. He only
It's
has 1
deck
demon
thinning.
left.
Yeah.
Very relevant. And wow, Spellslinger Umbra. If the cube comes out, that is game over.
It doesn't even need to come out. Look how much. This is just so much stuff that's happening.
Right.
For Reynad. Astrogation's got a ton of cards left, but Reynad's deck is now basically pure gas.
And at this point, Reynad knows that he's saving life total, so the only way that Astrogation can fight back is through the board position. And if he can get a board advantage, he knows that he has the Battle
You hit that.
Slayer.
You hit that
He
3-1.
hit the 3-1 every time.
Which I'm a little bit curious about this. I think I would have liked to see the Doom Guard hit the 3-1 and the Void Lord hit the 4-1.
Don't you want to? He wants the Battle Spine the biggest threat, though, right?
I think that's Void Lord right now.
You think so?
Yeah. You got to get through that.
5 attack is pretty menacing. It challenges every single one of your minions.
You could be right. The long story short is that Astrogation's in trouble.
Yeah. This is real bad. Especially if the Cobalt Skillbane buff lands on the Battle Spine Slayer, kind of. Oh, man. Okay. That's not really a good draw for Reynad.
But he's at 30, so there's plenty
yeah.
more draws to be had.
Yeah. Life tap is really good in this position.
Cards that effectively win Reynad the game right now. Carnivorous Cube. Blood Reaver Gul'dan.
Right.
I'm thinking even something as insignificant as like a Mountain Giant we need right now.
That's not really insignificant. It'd be the strongest minion on board.
You can't play it this turn, but it's
Right.
it's potentially a giant thing to do next turn.
This is one of those interesting things, too. Reynad had the opportunity to develop and play the Spellstone to tempo. Not really get a lot of value out of the Spellstone because it just deal damage and not really heal anything. But I like it because the closer you get to those win conditions like Blood River Gul'dan or the Carnivorous Cube, it's the series is over.
Yeah, it's a resource battle. If Reynad can control the resource war well enough, it's like a giant embargo setup where Astrogation never gets anything through.
Reynad knows that Astrogation will guaranteed land the Bone Mare, so I think that's the only thing he's really concerned about. How do I best hedge against the Bone Mares?
Wow,
I think
latency.
Reynad didn't get the trade-off because the internets didn't. Ooh, that's not good.
That is very incredibly unfortunate.
The pirates.
Here we go.
We're gonna have to wait and see if that's gonna end up making a big difference here. I mean, in the end, Reynad played a little too slow. He is a person known to try to squeeze things in by the last second, so he's gonna have to use a little bit less real estate here.
Another Spellstone drawn. Goodness. It's just so much life total for Reynad.
Right. Twilight Drake, Spellstone.
So where do the trades end up sitting this turn? And is it Twilight Drake Spellstone, or is it just Mountain Giant? Mountain Giant leaves him vulnerable to exactly another Vile Spine draw.
I wonder.
I think I like Twilight Drake just a little bit better because it still bullies the board. It's a 4-4 or 4-5.
Smaller Spellstone to...
Maximize your value.
Yeah. Just hit him in the face.
It's 5 missed damage.
Yeah, I like that one better.
Yeah,
The resource
the
battle.
resource battle. Yeah,
The
just
resource
drain it.
battle.
You're giving him an opportunity to like bone bear push.
Don't get greedy. Drain him out.
Also, make the attack faster so that the rope doesn't count down, and you're again.
That might be an issue. The issue he's
Oh,
experiencing here.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we need an admin to get on this ASAP because this has
Wow.
been 2 turns now. The Doomguard has not been able to attack, and Reynad tried to do it a lot earlier. but-
Astrogation